Welcome to the Paddle and Fin podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we try to improve our skills as an angler by learning new techniques or improving the ones we already know. I'm your host, Ryan Milford. Welcome back to Paddle and Fin, Bass Fishing for Noobs. I'm your host, Ryan, as always. And today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Jody Queen coming in here. Welcome to the show again.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here, man.
Yeah, I hope everybody had a good Christmas and good New Year's and everything. And, we're right back at it. And figure we started off big, have Mr. Queen come on here, and he won big with the Hobie Tournament of Champions, and he was on the show about a month and a half ago on the Reel Down, and was talking to them, was talking about using a chatterbait, more specifically the jackhammer, and that's something I've talked to people on here about. I've still never been able to get the hang of it, but, who better to talk to about using it than, somebody that's won big money using it. So,
Man, I mean, this year it's been a banner year for me with the jackhammer. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know how to use a chatterbait. I didn't start throwing a chatterbait until last year. And when I got the jackhammer, I didn't really know how to use it. And I think it might have been good because I just started using it a lot of different ways.
Mm.
I used it like a jig, and I caught fish that way. And I used it, changing up the retrieve and just doing a lot of different things with it, and found out several different ways I could actually catch fish off of it, even if they weren't hitting it with the standard throw it out and reel it in, kind of thing.
Well, let me ask you this. This is a big question a lot of people have because of the price difference. Is there really that much of a difference between a jackhammer and your other chatterbaits? Because there's like a, $10 or maybe more difference in that and most other ones. So is there really that big a difference in it?
Well, I started out using some different jackhammers, not jackhammers, but different chatterbaits. And a buddy of mine was sitting next to me at a tournament on the Susquehanna River last year, and I was murdering them. I mean, I was just tearing them up. And he pulled up next to me, and he's like, "Man, what are you using?" I told him I showed him the jackhammer I was using, and he was using a different one. And we sat in that same hole side by side, and we're casting across each other and all around each other. We were fishing the same hole, and I kept catching. I outfished him 3-1 with that, and I gave him a jackhammer. He tied it on. He started catching them. So that was the start of answering that question you just asked for me. So I thought, well, what makes this thing so different? And I've watched a couple videos. There's one on YouTube where it shows all the different styles of jackhammers that Z-Man makes and the different sounds they make. And if you watch that video, it makes its own sound. There's no other sound from the other Z-Man products that sound like that. I haven't seen one comparing them to others, but as far as the price goes, I think they're worth it. I mean, especially if you're doing what I do, I think I've won close to $40,000 on a jackhammer this year.
Yeah, so that like
so
$18-$20 jackhammer,
So if you ask me, you're probably going to get a little biased opinion on that, but the proof is in the pudding for me. So I recently took a trip to Florida. Corey Dreyer and I went down there and fished Robin Reservoir, and we were fishing heavy wood, and everybody's like, "Man, I wouldn't throw that $15 jackhammer or $20 jackhammer in all that wood." But here's the thing you got to remember: most of these fish are shallow most of the time, so when you're throwing that jackhammer in shallow water, it's easy to get back.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I throw mine around wood, just anything that's sticking up. I throw it on all kinds of different grasses. It comes through grass really well. And there are different presentations for whatever it is you're fishing. But, if I got hung up, it's about kind of like a crankbait. You just go over and pull off the back side of it, and it'll come loose. It's usually not the hook that hangs up. It's the head of the bait you're using.
Right.
So it's not that bad. We spend our lives bass fishing in 0 to 5 feet of water usually. I mean, there are times when they do go out and get deep and get on, some hard rock bottom and school up on a brush pile or something like that. And of course, you would change your baits to fit that style of fishing. But as far as just hammering down and going up the banks and power fishing, it's a major tool in my arsenal.
Yeah, you definitely got me interested in it. So let's start this out with what kind of setup are you throwing it on, like rod and reel and line and all that good stuff?
Well, since these chatterbaits have come out, I mean, a lot of companies are coming out with rods that say they are tuned to the chatterbait. They call them chatterbait rods, but I found that in just about any good medium heavy, 7'3" medium heavy action, fast tips or to extra fast tip even, they work well with those baits. It's those rods are a dime a dozen out there. You can find them everywhere. You don't really need a good specialty rod for them. I throw a 7'3" fast tip, and I do use a little faster retrieve than some do, but it's just because that I like to sometimes change the part of the water column I'm fishing with them, and I'll retrieve them fast. If they're real active, I'll retrieve them fast and put it up on, just below the surface. And if they're a little bit finicky, I'll drop it down a little deeper and run it closer to the bottom. But yeah, I mean, the setups, I'll run anywhere from a 7.3 to 1 to 8.3 to 1. I like using the 8.3 to 1s just because if I'm throwing it in a lot of junk, a lot of times I like to start that retrieve really quick to keep it up out of it. And that's usually when a lot of my hits come. If I find a stump or a log that's laying just subsurface, I'll throw it over it and immediately start the retrieve. And when you immediately start the retrieve with that jackhammer, one of the biggest things about it, it's got a hunting action. And if you throw that out there and you're already got your button clicked up and you're ready to go when it hits the water and you give it a little jerk, it will do a little hunting thing before you start to retrieve on it. And man, it elicits a lot of strikes like that. I've also drug them right across the bottom. It's just according to what the fish want. Let the fish tell you what they want.
Well, something kind of going off what you said, something I have heard about the jackhammer compared to the cheaper chatterbaits is as soon as you start reeling, they start, flapping to where the cheaper chatterbaits, like I've noticed, like the ones I have are the $5 or $6 ones, the cheapest Z-Mans, the original, I guess it is.
Yep.
And those, you got to get a couple cranks in before you start feeling it start flutter. I've heard those jackhammers start going immediately.
They do. So. They do, and they'll do it while they're sinking. If you throw one out and it's doing this, it's doing this as it's dropping. So it takes very little pressure on that blade to actually get that blade working.
All right. What about line? What kind of line and what size line are you using for that?
Well, a lot of people laugh at me for using the line I use, but I use Berkeley Vanish. You can use the Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon, which is a little more expensive. It's good line. I get 2 spool off of one spool of that Berkeley Vanish, and it works good. It's fluorocarbon, and I have never had any problems with it. It acts good on my reels. But I use anything from a 14-pound test to 17-pound test in a Berkeley fluorocarbon.
And I feel good you saying the Berkeley Vanish because that's what I use most of the time with my fluorocarbon.
Man, it's great. It's great. It's affordable.
I don't have a lot to compare it to. I haven't used a lot of different brands of fishing line, but it's never done me wrong. If you spool it up right, it
Yeah.
seems to be just fine, and it's on the cheaper end. I
Mhm.
fish on a tight budget. I ain't trying to spend no big
Yeah.
money on some fishing line.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I've been using it for years, and I actually I never did do a whole lot of lake fishing before I started running the trails and doing this for a living. And I fished rocky rivers, and that line performed well for me there, and it performs well for me in the lakes. I mean, there's a lot of things, very abrasive things in the rivers I fish. I mean, the rocks and the logs and everything, and it held up good. So I just carried it over to the lakes. And it seems to be doing well for me. I pitch with it. I'll pitch heavy cover with it. I'll take 20-pound test, fluoro, and pitch it around heavy cover a lot, and I've never had a problem with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely, you know, I'm content with it.
Yeah, me too.
Uh, so I mean, you said that you used to just fish, a lot of rivers. Obviously you fish some lakes because you're doing the tournament thing. What when using the chatterbait, is there a preference on river or lake, or is it all the same? Or
Just for maybe color sometimes. If I'm fishing the river here where I live in these rocky smallmouth streams, I use a lot of green pumpkin, the
mm,
jackhammer and the green pumpkin, and I'll use if I'm fishing, and want to reel it a little bit fast, I'll fish the razor shad and the green pumpkin. If I want to reel it a little bit slower, I'll get me a diesel minnow, also by Z-Man, and I'll use them on the back because they're a little paddle tail, and they'll keep your bait up and a little higher in the water column.
yeah, I've heard a lot of people using the diesel minnow. Uh,
Yep,
what
they're great, man.
now? Do you pretty much stick to like that green pumpkin color for the most part, or you got a couple different colors you go back and forth between?
Yeah, I've got about four different colors that I use a lot. The farther south I go, the more likely I am to change those colors. I'm up here in smallmouth country and a lot of crawdads and crayfish, and that green pumpkin does really well. Uh, in super dark water, I'll throw a black and blue up here, with a black and blue trailer, and also in a razor shad. But when I get down south, they have a color called golden shiner that works really well in these wild shiner lakes down south and around Florida, and uh, they work really well.
Yeah,
Now,
I was gonna ask with that, like, how far down south you talking? Like, I'm in Tennessee, just south of Nashville.
yeah,
I consider south, but I'm not like south
yeah,
like.
it's not south side. Yeah, yeah, no, Tennessee, dude. Yeah, I mean, I fish green pumpkin a lot in all the Tennessee chain. Uh, Now, one thing that you watch out for in those areas are like the shad spawns and stuff like that. Now, if you come in during a shad spawn, I'll usually throw a shad imitation color. Throw a solid white with maybe a little green stripe in it. Just take a dye pen and take a white diesel minnow and just put your little stripe down it, and maybe take the red dye pen and just do a fake gill around the head of your trailer, but mostly white. Yeah, mostly anything shad imitation, white with the black bands on it. Something that looks like a shad during that time of the year.
So you're really doing some customization to yours.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's times when bass like to feed mostly on shad, and and if you get these bass that are schooling up on these shad, they don't. I mean, you'll see them bust the top sometimes, but not all the time. Sometimes if you come across these shad schools and you just see them swimming, all of a sudden they just do a little flurry real quick. They just boil real quick, but you don't see nothing busting on them. There's usually fish up underneath them causing them to do that. It's just a reaction. Uh, and if you're, you know, shoot, I lost my train of thought. The shad spawn, a lot of people will throw. I mean, they get up on the banks and they get around the docks and stuff, and I used to throw, a lot of times I'll throw a wake bait or a shad imitation crankbait and do good on the shad spawn. But I'm finding now that a lot of times you can do that with a chatterbait too.
Okay. I did want to rewind just a little bit with the whole trailer choice. Now, you're talking about in darker water using, I think you said, well, with the black and blue, right now, the waters around me, from what I've seen, have been pretty muddy, pretty stained.
Yeah.
Maybe a foot of visibility at the moment.
Yeah.
So the other day I went out with no luck, but I was trying to throw a black and blue chatterbait. What trailer do you usually use for it? Do you use the same type of trailer, or do you change it up? Because I was using more of like a crawl trailer.
Yeah, the water's cooler right now, and you can use a crawl trailer. And I'll tell you a good crawl trailer to use with that when the water gets cool like this and you want to slow that presentation down. Now, you got to remember also that the jackhammer emits a lot of sound. So if you're fishing cold, muddy water, that sound is going to really kick their lateral lines in. They're going to say, I can feel that. I know where it's at. But if you just wanted to slow it down and still use that black and blue, you can pick up, several companies make these. You can take a Havoc, makes a crawl, or a double.
Talking about like the beaver type thing?
No, I'm trying to think here. Hang on. It's a grub, a twin tail grub. Havoc makes a twin tail grub that you can use in a black and blue, and you can use them on there. But I really like it. If I really want to slow it down a lot, I'll take a Gary Yamamoto in a black and blue and a hula grub. It's got the hula skirt, got the frilled skirt on it. And when you push that up on your hook, you got all that extra resistance that it creates, and it still vibrates well, and it has the double tails coming off of it. Big Bite Baits, they make another one. It's a twin-tailed hula grub is all it is. Chompers makes a good one. So yeah, anytime you really want to slow that presentation down even more than a diesel minnow does, I'll use those twin-tail grubs and use them in colder water.
Okay. Something else I wanted to ask you about that is with like a swim bait style trailer. I've heard of people saying turn them upside down. I believe it started with tactical bassing. On YouTube, them talking about it. But a lot of people refer to that now with turning it upside down so the tail kind of will match the action of the blade. Do you ever do that, or do you just put them on regular?
When I first started using those chatterbaits, I did. I turned it upside down because it seemed like also that it left a better. I was thinking that it would have a better hook set ratio because the belly of those baits were a little bit softer, and they usually have a groove in them. But I don't do that anymore. The way I hook mine now is I will just make sure that when I go into my trailer, I use the Razor Shads by Z-Man. I'll go into my trailer and keep my hook a little high along the back. And when I come back out of it, it leaves a pretty wide gap between the back of that trailer and the tip of my hook. And actually, if you look at I wish I should have had one here for you to look at. But when you hold my chatterbaits up with that trailer on it, that trailer actually hangs down just a little bit off the back of that hook because I've got it pinned to where I've got the widest part of that hook showing. So, yeah, I mean, you can turn them upside down. I've even gone as far as I've seen times when the fish really wanted an erratic action, erratic hunting action, and you can actually go into your trailer and come out just a little bit off on it, a little bit to the side, bring the tip out a little bit to the side, and that will cause a little bit of a bend in your trailer.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It will cause it to do all kinds of funky stuff. So, I mean, yeah, so if I'm just throwing it out and just give it a pop, it does this. It just does all kinds of stuff. So,
I'm so uncoordinated that I accidentally do that anyways.
You just come by it naturally, man.
Yeah. I still ain't had no luck on it though, but like I said, I've been using those, the original Z-Man chatterbait, so I'm gonna have to step my game up there. Now,
Yeah, go ahead and take the leap, man. Just get one. Don't use it deep if you're afraid to use it. I mean, if you don't want to, $15 or $20 is a lot to pay for a bait. I mean, the mega bass jerk baits for me are just, I'm scared to death to use a deep runner, but sometimes you got to do that. But just go ahead and stay shallow. You'd be surprised how many of those fish actually stay shallow and use it and get used to it. Try to figure out different ways to alter your retrieves. And I use a 3/8 ounce just about for everything.
3/8 ounce. All right, I'm gonna have to keep that in mind whenever I go to get mine. Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where you're throwing it at. Are you? I've mainly went for largemouth. Smallmouth. I'm trying to get into it a little more. I've caught a couple, but so I guess those scenarios are going to be different depending on which species you're going after. But like I'm curious where you're mainly targeting as far as like rocks or lay downs or I know you said like you're more shallow most of the time.
Yeah, any type of grass, grass edges, pockets in back in hydrilla, any kind of grass I'll throw that. Even I'll give you an example. Down on Fellsmere, which a lot of people have heard of, there's a lot of hydrilla, and some of that hydrilla will come up. It'll be just below the surface of the water. And when I first started throwing in that stuff, it was kind of aggravating because as soon as it hit, you're hung up. But what you got to realize is those fish are in that. So what I started doing was, if I found a pocket or a hole, I would drop the chatterbait in and let it go all the way to the bottom, and then I'd just give it a yank. And when it got into the grass, I'd just let it sit a little bit, and then I'd yank it again and yank it again. Just keep it yanking it through that grass, and those bass will come up and hit that, especially when it clears like a grass edge. If you're fishing a grass edge and you get hooked up on it, just throw it into it, jerk it out of that grass, and when it comes out of that grass, there's usually something there. If he's there, he's going to hit it because it's just a reaction strike. They work great in rocky rivers. I fished the new river over here, and if you ever get a chance to throw that chatterbait in a rocky situation, if it's water's cooler, just watch it how it comes over top of those rocks. It'll hit those rocks, man. You can put it right down on top of it, and it just hops over those rocks. And if you want to get it down on the bottom. But yeah, just about any area is okay to throw it. I try to stay shallow with them. I have used some of them deep, and there's some guys out there like Mel Ash who he'll fish 20 foot of water with them. He'll take an ouncer or an ounce and a quarter and throw it out and let it hit the bottom and just reel it back in real slow. There's guys that use them that way. Personally, for me, I don't use them that way. I use other things when I'm fishing water that deep.
Yeah, see, the way I was trying to use it the other day, right now the water's low, it's at like winter pool. And so they don't let the water out of the dam in the lake. So the river's low too. The river I've been going to that feeds into the lake. And so, like I said, I'm mainly targeted largemouth. So, I'm used to fishing a lot of wood structure. Well, a lot of the shallow wood structure is up on the bank now because the water's so low. So I've been trying to target like these rock walls where it's like, 15, 20 foot deep right there beside the wall.
Yeah.
And I was trying to use that chatterbait there the other day because the water's so dirty. I was thinking the same thing you said earlier with, them feeling that vibration and coming to it. But, I still didn't have any luck with it. So.
Yeah. Fishing those types of areas, I mean, you're kind of blind casting. You don't know what the actual depth is, and the depth is dropping off so fast that you can't really get a good read on it. I mean, if you're set on using a chatterbait in those areas, try to get parallel with the bank, and and work those areas parallel to the bank. And you can move them out, step them down, move them out, step them down until you find the area. If you hook up with a fish and you kind of find the depth that they're at, then you can go from there. But yeah, those areas are, the area that you described to me that's crankbait heaven. So, I would probably throw a crankbait in that area.
Yeah, I thought about that because I did just get a new crankbait from our Secret Santa we did here on Paddle and Fin between all the hosts, and I thought about throwing it, but I've never really had much success with the crankbait myself. I think I've talked about it on here before, but I've caught one fish off a crankbait ever, and that was as soon as it hit the water. So I don't really count that as a crankbait catch. Whoever I was talking to with it, they said it best. So that's more of a topwater bite or topwater catch right there. Because it was as soon as it hit the water.
Crankbaits and jackhammers have a lot of similarities. I mean, you can run them both, off the bottom in the middle of the water column. You can, bump them off rocks. The crankbait is for me, is kind of a specialized bait. When it comes to those rock walls and rocky drops and outcroppings, and I love throwing them across points, and at certain times of year they're very effective. The thing I found about the jackhammer or the chatterbait is that it doesn't matter what time of the year I'm using it, I seem to catch more fish on it than I would a crankbait. Now that I've seen times when the fish set up, you're fishing areas that hold fish in groups that a crankbait will just tear them up, and there's no equal to it, but all baits have those certain times, in the year when they are the bait to be throwing. But it seems like I can throw a chatterbait year round, now when it gets cold in winter like it is right now, we got about an inch of snow on the ground out here. It's been snowing since about 6 o'clock. When it gets like this, I'll slow my presentation down. I'll do a small drop shot or downsize and just do small jigs and stuff like that, and still catch some pretty good size smallmouth, even off of a 1/8 ounce, 1 inch style tube jig or something. But yeah, I mean, I'll slow down. But most of the time, it's a good time to throw a chatterbait.
Yeah, you're talking about the snow. I know a lot of those guys up north that are hosts here on Paddle and Fin. They're talking about like, man, I can't wait to go fishing. A lot of them, we got like ice or it's just really cold, so they don't want to get out there. And part of me wants to, kind of laugh in their face about it a little bit, like, the water's still 54 degrees here.
Oh man, you can't be rubbing that in on them.
Well, I don't, because then it's like, well, I'm still not catching any fish right now. Now this is my first winter, trying to fish, so I'm trying to figure it out. I'm having a rough time with it, but I'm trying to figure it out. But
oh, man, wintertime is a rough time to fish. This time of the year on the Tennessee chain, jerk baits do real good if you can find them. Use your electronics. That's a major tool too, man. If you can find those groups of fish.
And I just got my fish finder and just got it set up, and I've never really used one before, so I'm still trying to figure it out and get to where I
can play with it.
Yeah, and even still, it ain't like a fancy fish finder either. It's $120 or something like that, so it's nothing too crazy. But I'm trying to get to where I can read it a little better. I've been playing with settings and all that. It's probably a bad thing that I'm playing with settings, because I'm probably gonna mess it all up.
No, man. I mean, they're like anything else. They're like an instrument that you're trying to learn to play. And so, I mean, play with it, use it. Figure out what it can help you do, and use it for that every time you go out. And I mean, even the less expensive fish finders have their uses. I mean, I've got an old Hook 5 Lowrance in there that I actually really like it. It's got the square screen. It's 5 inches, but it shows contours on the bottom great. You get a great signal off of it. You can tell if you're on hard bottom, soft bottom. It gives you depth readings. It gives you temperature readings, and those are things that are good to know. I mean, if I run over a school in it, I mean, it's got sensitivity settings, so you know if you're running over bait fish or you know if you're running over an actual school of fish. The rest of it is just learning how the fish lay and how to pick them. Say, hey, I know those are bass. That's hard to do. That's hard for me to do because I haven't been on electronics very long either. I've learned more this year on electronics than any year that I can remember. I've only had my electronics now for about two and a half years probably. But just watch YouTube videos. I mean, there's a lot of information out there on. Ask friends that you know that are good on electronics and get as much information as you can.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with it right now is I don't know where it's reading. I don't know if what I'm seeing is right below me or 10 feet out from me or what it. I think one of the biggest issues is I haven't actually mounted my transducer yet. I got a Vibe Seaghost 130, and it's got a little hole right up here in the front, and I've been kind of just dropping my transducer down in there, so it's probably reading behind me or side to me or anywhere else.
Yeah,
I
you
need to actually mount it
where it's actually supposed to be mounted, and when you do, you gotta think of like it's just a cone is all it is on most of these things. When you're shooting straight down, and in the guide that comes with the unit, it'll tell you how big of a cone is hitting the bottom in a certain amount of depth. Like if you're sitting in 14 feet of water, it's throwing a 5-foot diameter cone on the bottom. I mean, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
So if you know that when you're running 14 foot of water, you know that you're running over an area that's 5 foot in diameter, all underneath your boat. So once you get used to those units and figure out what you're seeing when you're doing that, you'll get better and better at it.
Yeah, it's probably something I'm going to do here in the next week or two whenever I get a chance to mess with it. So with the chatterbait, is there anything that I didn't ask about or that we didn't talk about that you feel like needs to be covered, or did we pretty much?
I mean, no, just don't be afraid to chuck that thing in some grass. Some of the best areas that I know of that are real highly productive with the chatterbait are areas with grass and flats. Anywhere you find creek channels that flow into the lake when you get out off the bank, and it's just like a big flat of an area that's like on the TOC. I was fishing an area that was probably 250 yards long and 75 yards wide, and it was all 5 foot deep. It was just a big flat area. Those flat areas, a lot of times they contain stumps and rocks and just small areas that have a little bit of cover on them. And those big, large areas, any type of cover that's separated and by itself will attract fish. So yeah, get on those flats with that chatterbait. And when you're using it, around grass, when I was fishing the championships up in La Crosse, I was throwing directly into the grass and just letting it go down as far as it would sink. I was only in about 5 foot of water, and then I would just give it a big yank, man, just yank it out of that grass, and it'd come through the grass and it'd yank the grass off of it. And when it cleared that grass edge, I was catching fish that way. So yeah, just don't be afraid to throw it in those areas that are 5 foot or less, man. Use it as much as you can in that shallow water, because you can always get that chatterbait back. So,
yeah, man, I got some Christmas money. Some people gave me some cash. $50 or so. I might have to go pick up a couple of them.
Go get one. You will not regret it.
It's basically free at that point, right?
That's right, man. Why not spend it on something like that?
Yeah,
it has totally changed my style of fishing. I'll tell you that, because I would have never thought that I would be. I've won almost $40,000 on a chatterbait this year.
That's crazy to think about.
And I throw other baits too, but those baits they're once you learn how to use them, they are money. They're money.
Yeah, but see, here in a couple of years, with you winning all that money on them, everybody's going to be throwing them, so you ain't going to be able to catch fish on them here in a couple of years. You're going to have to find something else.
In a couple of years, there'll be something else comes out. I promise you.
I'm sure there will.
It's like the year of the plopper, man. You remember that year, don't you? man, everything was hitting the ploppers, everybody, and everybody's coming in. Their shoulders were sore and all hushed up because they threw that 130 plopper all day. They used to call that Dahlberg's disease.
This was actually my first year using a whopper plopper, and I fell in love with it this year. You know, I caught so many fish off of it this year.
They're great. They're great.
All right, so yeah, I think we pretty much touched on everything, you know, jackhammer wise, and I guess chatterbait wise. Something that I used to do that I haven't done in a while that I'd like to start doing again, if you don't mind. I used to ask with okay, if somebody is brand new to bass fishing and wanted to go buy 3 baits, what 3 baits would you tell them to buy?
I'd buy a jig first. If you didn't buy anything else, buy a jig. A good, just a 1/4 ounce head, a light jig with a, you know, just a bass jig and with a crawdad chunk trailer. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Second, definitely buy a jackhammer. I mean,
gotta have that jackhammer.
There's the middle of your water column. It covers a lot of territory. My third pick would probably be close between a spinner bait and a jerk bait.
All right.
I mean, those baits are no fail baits, and jigs will catch you some of the biggest fish that you've ever caught in your life.
Oh, my personal best is on a flipping jig. You know.
There you go. Yep. My personal best came this year off a jackhammer, dude. It was 10 pounds, 8 ounces. For whatever reason, the big ones like those jackhammers too. And just came from Florida. Me and Corey Dreyer went down, and I caught it in like an hour and 10 minutes. I caught a 5, a 6, a 7, and a 9.2, all off a jackhammer.
Wow.
Yeah,
I had crazy.
I had 104 inches in a little over an hour.
That is crazy. I bet you wish you were fishing a tournament then.
Yeah, I wish. But the thing about Rodman right now is they every 4 years they do a drawdown on Rodman. So if anybody's listening, they want to go catch a big bass. Every 4 years they drop Rodman, the water level in it, and it's a 12,000 acre reservoir. Right now it's 4,000 acres, and there's about maybe 2,500 acres of it that's actually fishable. So the fish are just stacked up on top of each other. So, I mean, if you guys find yourself down in North Florida, you know, below Jacksonville, about an hour there, around Ocala and that area, Rodman Reservoir is a place to be right now.
Are you sponsored by Z-Man yet? Because you should be. Yeah.
Not yet, I'm not. You know, I keep waiting on that phone call, or maybe they're waiting on me to call them. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. I might need to give them a call. Might be worth it.
But I would definitely take that sponsorship because I use all of their.
I bet.
But you know what? To this day, I've never thrown a TRD. To this day, I've never thrown a TRD. And it's not that I don't like them, and it's not that I think they won't catch fish, because I've seen all my buddies. They whack them with them things, but I've just never thrown one.
Yeah, my personal best smallmouth, which, you know, it ain't saying much, but, you know, it came off a, you know, Z-Man Ned rig, and you know, it was only like 17.5 inches. That's but good. You know, yeah, it was a fun fight. You know, that medium light rod with 6 pound test. You know, that was a fun fight.
Yeah, it's on.
But yeah, one more question before we start wrapping this up. Okay. You know, to a brand new bass fisherman just getting into it, what's one piece of advice that you would give them?
Never give up. Have patience. You know, when you get out there on the water, you know, I don't go out every time and just absolutely murder the fish every time I go out. There's going to be times when it's you know, it's slow, or it's post-frontal conditions and there's high blue sky. There's always, you know, something going on. There's going to be a time when you go out and you just need to have a positive attitude. A lot of it is right here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, keep a good positive attitude. Find a bait that you want to learn, and stick with it. Don't jump from one bait to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and then say, "Oh, I can't fish," because the more you use the bait, the more you're going to understand the intricacies of that bait. You're going to understand how it moves in the water, and then when you get that first hit, you're going to say, "Aha, that's something right there," and you'll get the feel for that bait. But try to gain as much confidence in all the baits that you can. If somebody comes up and throws you a spinner bait, you want to have the confidence, say, "Hey, man, I can throw a spinner bait." You know, jerk bait, I know how to use a jerk bait. Try to get as much confidence in all those baits as you can, but start with one. Get that confidence in one, and before you go to another one, don't give up on it. But yeah, it's a lot of it. It's 90%. It's just mental attitude. It's all up here.
I agree with that. I've actually had issues with that here lately, trying to figure out this winter fishing. Been pretty
Yeah.
pretty frustrating. Trying to.
Wintertime's tough, dude. It's tough unless you have good electronics and you really know and can really find the fish where they're grouped up. It's tough, but time on the water, mental attitude, confidence with the bait that you're throwing. Those are probably the three top things. I would suggest that you try to, overcome.
Well, all right, man. Well, Mr. Queen, I
Yes,
appreciate you
sir.
coming on here and sharing all your knowledge about jackhammers and chatterbaits in general. And I hope everybody's able to take this and you know and hope I'm able to take this and learn something from it and you know be able to start catching some fish. Maybe you inspired. I know you inspired me to go spend a couple extra dollars on that jackhammer.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like there's going to be some other people that are going to be like, you know what? Let me go buy one or two and just see how it goes.
Well, man, I'll tell you, I want everybody to catch fish. I mean, it's something that I love, and the way I feel when I catch something like that, and it's a personal best or just a bluegill, it's just everybody should be able to feel that. So, I mean, I hope you catch a ton of fish, and I don't mind sharing. I love to share information because it helps you catch fish. So maybe one day I'll come to you and say, "Hey, man, how you catching those fish?" And hopefully you'll show me the same courtesy.
Well, if it ever comes to that, I help you out. I don't foresee that happening, but you never know.
Well, I hope it does.
Here in the next couple of years, I might, maybe I'll be like a stick, but I doubt it. But dream big.
Hey, man, see, mental attitude, mental attitude.
Got to dream big, man. All
That's
right.
right.
You want to give like a shout out real quick of social media and show sponsors and all that good stuff?
Man, I would love to. Thank you. Yeah, first of all, they're not my sponsor, but I appreciate Z-Man for the products that they're putting out right now. They're top of the line, cutting edge. Also, I'd like to thank Torquedo, which has been with me since pretty much the beginning. I started this journey. I'd also like to thank Fishing Online. John and Brianne Harley, great people, man, great company. They're a small company that gets things done fast, and they're very efficient. They have and great products. Land Cruiser Restorations. I know that sounds kind of weird, but man, they've been with me since I started this thing. They helped me out a lot with some tournaments and stuff. And James Shepard, if you ever get a chance, go over and check them out on landcruisersrestoration.com. Who else am I missing here? Oh, Yak Attack, man. I mean, gosh, man, Yak Attack.
Can't forget Yak Attack.
Good Lord. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with it. Yeah, man. I mean, you know how it is. You got to have stuff on your yak, dude. I mean, anything that buttons up or spins or locks or holds a paddle or holds a net or even the net, it's the Yak Attack. It is. It just is. They put out great products, and the reason why they're as good as they do is because they've been on it since the beginning too. I mean, these companies that have been there, they're the ones that are going to continue to excel in our market. So yeah, Yak Attack, big kudos to those guys, man. They're great. Luther Cyphers, John Hipsher, those guys, man, they're great guys.
You want to shout out social media, or you got Instagram or?
Yeah, you can follow my page at Jody Queen Pro Angler on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, Jody Queen Pro Angler. You can go over there and check out and see what I'm doing. I don't have a lot of content on there right now, but I'm getting ready to dump some more stuff on it. Jody Queen 8635 on my Instagram. Yeah, just come over and give me a like and a thumbs up or something, and let me know that you like me. Show me some love. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been a fun conversation, real informative and everything. So I appreciate you coming on again. Coming and talking to us little guys that here at Paddle and Fin.
Oh man, I tell my buddies I learn something from everybody every time I go out. I don't care if you've been fishing 6 months or 60 years. I mean, there's always something to learn from somebody. I mean, always, and having the resources there to learn from somebody and not having to go through all the trial and error is just going to make you a better fisherman. So, soak up all the information you can get, and I'm free with it. And a lot of the guys in the kayak industry, like, Cody Milton, Corey Dreyer, and those guys, they'll help you out any way they can too. That's just who we are in the kayak industry, I guess.
Yeah, everybody's been real cool that I've met. I ain't got into the tournament scene yet, but I've heard that it's just
the same.
Yeah, great community.
Yep.
But there you go, everybody. It's Mr. Jody Queen right there. Go follow him on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. But other than that, tight lines and smooth paddling.
Peace out.
Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N and fin.com. Also check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle and fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N and fin @gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at paddle and fin. Shout out to our show supporters, Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to catchproducts.com. You can put the Paddle and Fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.